The night is October 6th, 2019, a Sunday. There's a pub called Buddha Live, which is located in Fort Myers, Florida, and it is well known for live music and putting on good band nights. Many people from the local area attend this venue, and on this night, there are quite a few people who are there. Amongst the many people in attendance is a man named Jason Shepard.
What did you do on the evening of October 6th of 2019?
Went to the Buddha.
Okay. And had you been to the Buddha previously?
Yeah.
How close was the Buddha to your home?
A little more than 5 minutes away.
Okay. And did you go to the Buddha with anybody?
Yeah, a friend of mine.
What did you do when you got there?
Had some drinks, hung out, and then she left.
Okay. And did you talk to other people while you were there?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
While you were there, did you meet someone?
Yep.
Who did you meet?
A dude named Junior.
When Junior introduced himself to you, describe his personality.
He was cool. He was fine. He seemed cool.
And if he wasn't cool or gave you any kind of weird vibe?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have kept talking to him.
Now, was Junior there with anyone?
Yeah.
Who was he with?
A blonde-haired girl, real pretty blonde-haired girl.
And did it seem that the two of them were together?
Yep.
Now, at some point, did she leave?
Yep.
Did you ever see her again that night?
No.
The man calling himself Junior, his real name is Wade Wilson, and he's 25 years old. On this evening, he had arrived with his girlfriend Melissa, also known as Mila, the blonde-haired girl that Jason was referring to. Mila's friend Amy had also joined them for the night out. Mila had driven them all there in her car, and upon arriving at the bar, she handed her keys to Wade so that he could keep them safe. It's unclear why Mila and her friend Amy stopped hanging out with Wade on the night, but they did. And at some point, Wade, aka Junior, meets two women who he begins to speak with, Stephanie Johnson and Christine Melton.
Towards the end of the night, as we were walking up to the upstairs bar, somebody jumped out in front of me, kind of just like to get my attention, and said, "Hey, who's your friend?" And gestured towards Christine. And, you know, he seemed friendly and introduced himself, and I grabbed Christine and said, "Hey, this guy wants to meet you."
What was his demeanor?
Friendly, charming. Christine and I and JR and another man, Jason, who we were introduced to by JR, talked at the bar, mingled. Christine and JR seemed to be interested in each other. Me and Christine had commented on how he had dimples, and one of the guys she had been talking to earlier in the night only had one dimple, and he had two dimples. And, she definitely was attracted to him, and he seemed attracted to her. And
has his appearance changed since the time that you met him?
Yes, he has a lot more tattoos on his face. He did not have any facial tattoos.
Yeah, he didn't have all this.
When you say all this?
Tattoos.
At some point during the night, a plan is made where an after-party sort of thing would kick on at Jason's house once the bar closed. This would be at around 2 a.m. Wade leaves the group momentarily and tries to convince his girlfriend and her friend to come along, but they do not want to go. So Wade rejoins the other group, and the night continues on. When the bar is getting close to closing, Wade, Jason, Stephanie, and Christine all find themselves outside in the parking lot.
Christine and I went outside, and we're still continuing to socialize with JR and Jason until, it was decided to leave. And me and Christine had came in an Uber, so we followed Jason and JR to their car.
You got a ride back. Whose car did you get a ride back in?
Junior's.
JR had tossed the keys over to Jason, and we were going to go after party. I didn't know at that point if we were going back to Christine's house or where we were headed from there, but we were going together.
When I walked outside, I noticed Mila's car to the right of me leaving, and then I noticed to the left of me at the stoop, Mila was standing there. So I was like, why is your car driving away? And she said, Wade took the car.
He stole my vehicle and went.
So did you know he was going to take your vehicle?
No,
How did you find out that your vehicle was?
I saw it leaving the Buddha.
So you were stuck at the Buddha without your car.
And Amy was out there. She was watching it drive away as well. And she said, it's okay, come to my house.
So did you end up going to her house?
Yes.
And did you spend the night at her house?
Yes.
As the party of 4 leave the parking lot in high spirits, 3 of them are completely unaware that this car doesn't belong to Wade, or JR as they knew him. It is reported that everyone was having a good time. They felt comfortable, and were all quite interested in keeping the night going.
We drove not very far. It was only a couple of turns, maybe less than 10 minutes in the car, but we ended up at Jason's house.
When you got there, who was there?
My mother.
Was she okay with you being there at first?
Yeah. Not really.
Not thrilled?
Yeah, no, it was late, early, however you want to put it.
All right.
When we walked in the front door, his mom was awake and on the couch and not very happy that he was bringing people home. We tried to make small talk and, kind of ease the situation, but we just ended up going to Jason's bedroom, which was down the hall. Pretty quickly after getting to Jason's house, Christine and JR started having sex.
It wasn't long at all. Him and Christine were having sex pretty quick and getting to it, and me and Stephanie, I think, went out back. I had a trampoline out back, and we went out back. We just sat out there and hung out and talked for a while.
Did the two of you have any interest in each other that night beyond just talking and friendship?
No,
So did the two of you hook up at all?
no.
Now, you said that Christine and Junior were having sex. Did it appear to be consensual?
Yeah.
They were having a good time?
Yeah.
And you and Stephanie didn't want to necessarily stand around and watch,
Nope.
so you go outside.
Yeah.
All right. And were you and Stephanie interested in each other at all?
No.
So you're just talking?
Yeah.
Christine and JR were inside for a while. They came outside and mingled a little bit with us and went back into the bedroom.
Throughout the course of the evening, did they come outside and go back inside several times?
Yeah, once or twice, and then went back in and kept doing what they were doing.
And during any point of these interactions, did you have any concern for your safety?
Nope.
Did you have any concern for Christine's safety? Mm-mm. Did anybody use any drugs that night?
Yeah, we did a little coke.
When you say coke, you mean cocaine?
Cocaine.
Now, at some point, did Stephanie and Christine and Junior leave your house?
Yeah, it was just getting too loud, and it was time to go. I had to work the next day. It was getting too late.
So party's over.
Time to go.
They're supposed to leave.
Yep.
After about 2 hours, did you all leave?
Yes. So, kind of, quickly, JR was saying, oh, we got to go. This guy doesn't want us here anymore. And it was kind of at that point that I realized that Jason and JR didn't know each other before this night. When we went to the driveway, we got back into the car that we came in, which Jason had drove at that time, but now JR was driving. JR is trying to back the car out of the driveway, and he can't get it to go in reverse. It's just revving the engine in the driveway.
Is the car a manual or a stick shift?
It's a stick shift
Is
car.
it clear to you that he was unable to drive a stick shift?
Yes.
Well, like I said earlier, he couldn't drive a stick shift, so that car's loud down my driveway, revving up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
So how did you feel about the car revving in your driveway?
I was pissed.
Okay. So what'd you do?
I went outside,
What'd you
confronted him about it.
Okay. What happened after you confronted them?
Kind of got the car out of the driveway a little bit.
You got it out?
No, he did.
At that point, JR had actually gotten the car into reverse and into the street. He was trying to get the car into drive and go forward, and same thing, he couldn't get the car to move. He's just revving the engine in the middle of the street.
I got in the car and moved it down the road just to get it away from my house.
Did you see where they went after you got the car out down the road?
No, I really didn't care.
It was at that point that I got out of the car and said to Christine, I said, get out of the car, let's take an Uber. Let's get in an Uber and go home.
The Uber arrives and Stephanie jumps in, but Wade and Christine are taking their time because they're searching for his lost phone. The cell phone isn't found, and eventually all three return to Christine's apartment via Uber, where they hang out for a little. It's approximately 6 a.m. when Stephanie says that it's time for her to go as she has work in a few hours.
I remember telling Christine, I have to go home, I have to go to work, and she was like, okay. She hugged me and kissed me goodbye and said, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
And again, when she told you goodbye and that she'd see you tomorrow, did you have any concerns for her safety?
No.
And in fact, if you did, would you have left her home with just her and Wade Wilson in that house?
Not at all. And if she was concerned, Christine would have never let me leave that house if she was scared. She would have said, let's get this guy out of here together.
At this point, Stephanie leaves Wade and Christine together at the apartment and heads home to get ready for work. About an hour later, Mila, Wade's girlfriend, who had spent the night on her friend Amy's couch, she begins to receive multiple phone calls and text messages from an unknown number. She sleeps through a lot of these notifications, but around 8:30 a.m., Mila is awake. She notices her phone ringing and answers. Although the number is unknown, it's Wade on the other end.
When I first heard his voice, it was, where are you? Can I come get you? I can't really remember, but it was more calm at first.
Okay.
As I started saying, I want my keys, I want my car, where are you? I need to get them back. It escalated more into name calling and aggression and intimidation.
Okay. What names is he calling you?
Bitch, cunt, whore, all these different names. And just, I can't remember the threats per se, but it was very intimidating.
I had my bedroom door open and I heard her speaking on her phone saying, I don't know, let me check for a piece of mail and I'll give you the address. And I hollered to her, Mila, I don't know him. I don't want him in my house. My son is here. I will take you wherever you need to go. Like, if you want me to drive you somewhere, I'll take you wherever you need to go. So she was like, we'll just meet you at my spa.
What was your purpose in meeting with him?
To retrieve my car and to get my keys, because I was finale. That was it. I wanted my property back to never see him again.
Now, did you believe that he would show up in your car when you met him?
Of course. That's what he left in, yes.
So where did you agree to meet him?
Mila Spa.
When you arrived at Mila's Spa, did you see your Hellcat?
No.
Did you see a different car?
Yes.
And was it a car that you recognized?
No.
Does this look like the car that he was driving?
Yes. I went to the driver's side window. He wrote it down. I said, where are my keys? Where's my car? He was calm and just saying, get in the car, get in the car. And it escalated quickly.
He tried to pull her in the window.
How did she respond?
She started fighting immediately.
Violent, aggressive, tried to pull me in the car physically. And I resisted, got plank style so that he could not grab me into the vehicle.
When you say you got plank style, could you just show the jurors what you mean by that? Okay, so for the record, you just stood up and put your hands straight above your head.
Yes, so that I was not being able to be budged into the vehicle.
And you said he's pulling at your dress.
Yes.
Can you describe in more detail how he's pulling at your dress?
He's pulling dress, probably a little hair, everything, and then the dress starts to rip off of my body. I was getting away from him and he was still holding onto the dress. He opens the car door, obviously forgets to put it in park. The car starts to roll forward. He tackles to me to the ground. The car grazes both of our legs and I'm pummeled to the ground.
How hard did he push you to the ground?
I'm sorry, I don't recall. This is also fast and he's very heavy and I'm 5'2", he's 6'6", so.
Now, what happens after you are pushed to the ground?
I start to get beat
He was ripping her dress off of her. He was pulling her hair. Her extensions were everywhere all over the ground. And then he proceeded to drag her from the parking lot to the stairs.
I either get drugged, pulled, can't remember, by my hair, or arm, or dress, to I'm trying to reason with him, trying to talk to him, but there's nobody behind those eyes anymore. So there was no reasoning with him. I got to the front of the staircase, and I'm holding on to that.
She was holding on to the banister like a monkey, trying to hold on, and he just kept ripping her.
A crowd begins to develop. I'm expecting people to help, call 911. So I'm just trying to bide my time at that point as quickly as help can get there.
There was I don't know if it's an upholstery shop or what it was, but design shop on the corner that has open windows, and there was a lawyer office. It was broad daylight.
I had heard the girls in the office say, "Oh my God, he hit her." And as I walked around, I could see him holding her up against the window, and she was screaming, saying, "Help, he's trying to kill me."
I'm starting to get punched and grabbed and choked and all kinds of things again. I'm trying to convince him, let's just go in Mila Spa. We'll talk about it there. We're safe there.
What was your thought process in getting him to your spa?
Elongate the amount of time it took to get help. I was trying anything that I could to expand the amount of time that I didn't have to go to his car where I'd probably never be seen again. I knew I was going to die that day. I was just buying time. The final and end punch that I remember, he got me so straight on, and blood just went crazy everywhere.
When he punched her in her face, her nose exploded.
I saw that, immediately shouted, "Stop, let her go. What are you doing?" And he turned around and saw me, and I believe he said, "She hit me first," or I know he was trying to kind of defend his actions.
It almost was like a minute where I could dunk under and run under his arm, run down the stairs, and then that's when my neighboring businesses, the design studio, were calling me, Mila, get in here.
So I was saying, "Run, like come, run." So she was able to run down the hallway, down the stairs, and my coworkers were in the building at the time. The door you can see on the left there, they unlocked that door, and we both went inside that door and locked it.
And I don't know if it was sirens in the background or the sound or the blood that came out of her nose that spooked him, but he immediately got into the black car and just started taking off.
Wade flees the location in the black Nissan, and shortly after, police arrive. Mila is provided with medical care for severe injuries to her face and nose. She works with law enforcement to assist with finding Wade so that they can press charges against him. A few hours after the assault, she manages to contact him using the number that he was calling her from earlier. She asks Wade to meet her at a restaurant across the road from her spa. He agrees to go there, and when he arrives, he is soon greeted by an officer.
Now, when you made contact with Mr. Wilson, could you please describe what his demeanor was like?
He seemed nervous, and when I spoke to him, he seemed a little defensive and uncooperative.
How you doing? What's going on, man? You're waiting on your girlfriend? Oh, okay. That's no problem. No, I got a call. Somebody was sitting in their car and everything like that. So. Oh, okay. She's on her way now. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And here's what's going to happen. Is the car running? Shut the car off for me. It's off. I'm going to detain you until I figure out what exactly is going on. I'm going to have you step out of the car, and I'm going to detain you. Not arrest. Detain you right now. Okay? And I can't have any problems. You understand me?
He was basically denying everything that I was asking him to do.
I have to detain you. By our procedures, I have to detain you. Because of the battery this morning. There wasn't any battery?
You told him specifically about a battery that occurred that morning. What was his response to you?
That there was no battery.
Let me see the keys to the car. Let me see the keys to the car. Keys. Keys. Wait, we're not going to have any problems. Just give me the keys to the car. Wait.
And when you advised him that you were going to detain him, he opted to leave the scene as an alternative choice to what you were telling him. Is that right?
Ultimately, yes, that was the outcome.
L41, gonna need a couple more units. Don't go anywhere. Hey. He's taking off, Fort Myers. Just ran a stop sign going up towards McGregor.
Did you follow, or did you continue to follow him?
I did for a short period of time
Okay. Why did you stop?
because of the time of day and the amount of traffic on the road. It was around lunchtime. It's somewhere there near lunchtime, and the amount of people on the road. At the time, I only had a non-pursuitable offense.
What does that mean?
I only had misdemeanor battery at the time.
Yes, sir.
So therefore, there was no probable cause to continue any type of pursuit.
Wade manages to evade authorities, and his whereabouts are unknown. Shortly after this event, not too far away from the location of the restaurant, there is an elementary school. A father of one of the children who attends the school is leaving the premises after paying some fees, and something catches his eye.
I went to the office, I paid the after school program, and I went out. I saw in the entrance of the school a woman purse, and this is what that caught my attention. I saw that probably some mom dropped it. I have seen people leaving stuff in the top of the car, and I saw that. So I turned, and I grabbed the purse and give to the police office inside the school, in the office.
Did you take that purse from the parent?
Yes, I did.
And whose purse was it?
I found the name Diane Ruiz inside the purse.
Now, at that point, did you know anything about Diane Ruiz?
No, I did not, no.
Do you know a lady by the name of Diana Ruiz?
Yes, of course.
How do you know
my
her?
mother?
Could you tell me what your mother did for a living?
She worked server and bartender most of her life.
Okay. And where was she working at the time?
Over at the Moose Lodge.
How far was that away from the place that you lived at the time?
If it's by car, less than 5 minutes. If she had to walk, maybe about 10, 15 minutes.
And how did she typically get to work?
She usually had an Uber. One of her good friends from the Moose Lodge usually brought her, but I guess she wasn't able to get in contact with him, so that's why she walked that day.
Then I started looking through our local police records to see if I could find address, telephone number to be able to try to get in contact with Diane Ruiz. I found a telephone number. I attempted it several times, left a voicemail. Since I wasn't successful and the front office couldn't find any records of a Diane Ruiz with Hector Cafferata, I found the address was nearby in the nearby neighborhood behind Hector Cafferata, and I asked a patrol unit if they could swing by the house.
I didn't get a phone call, but I got a knock on the door about her purse. And then I did tell them that take it over to Moose Lodge at first.
And when I checked at the Moose Lodge, they said she was no call, no show that day, which was highly unlikely of her.
So based on that, what did you do with the purse?
I ultimately, after speaking to our major crimes detectives, just because of the unusual circumstances, but since the son didn't report her as missing at the time, they said I could give the purse back to her son.
And I was kind of worried at first, and then when it came a second time is when is when I asked them to report her missing.
And what happened after you asked that she be reported missing?
That would be a blur, honestly, after that.
Did you ultimately wind up giving a statement to law enforcement?
I would assume so. I would think so.
But everything after that's a blur.
A lot of it is, truthfully.
Why?
A lot of trauma.
As the situation with the lost purse, and now the missing person, Diane Ruiz, was unfolding, Wade Wilson surfaces once more. This time, he is seen entering a local business, which is owned by a man named Joshua. Joshua knows Wade as an acquaintance through mutual friends, and he's also a friend of Wade's girlfriend, Mila.
Wade came in a black car. He backed up to one of the buildings on the property there. He was wearing sweatpants only, no shoes, no shirt. He was bloody, and he was missing a couple of teeth. And he came up to my truck, my vehicle, when I was on the property, and I was with a client at that time, so I told him to give me a moment, and I'll be right with him. And once I went into the building, he was there trying to get a plane ticket or a bus ticket or whatever he could from me to leave town. His demeanor was frantic, in a rush to leave as quickly as he could.
And what exactly was he saying to you?
He said he killed people, and he rolled up someone in a carpet or bedding or whatever it was, and that he also needed to get out of town. He needed a plane ticket and a bus ticket or anything he could.
When he was asking you for your assistance to leave, to get that plane ticket, how were you responding to him?
I responded to him by telling him that a friend of mine called and said that he was beating up Mila in the parking lot that morning, and I confronted him on that. I said, if that's all that it is, you're okay if you guys just got into a fight. But then he continued to talk crazy as far as, no, you don't understand, I killed people. And once it kind of set in, I threw a cigarette at him. I said, why don't you smoke a cigarette? I'll be right back. I told him that I needed to go pick up an employee of mine at a job down the road, and I would be back.
Was that just an excuse to separate yourself from Mr. Wilson that morning?
Yes.
Now, at that time, were you frightened?
Yeah. I called the police at that time when I was at the other building.
911, what is your emergency? I have a very unstable man that's, I guess, wanted at my office. He said he killed some people, and he just hurt a girl. He's saying he's done all these crazy things, killed somebody and has a stolen car there. It's very odd. Very, very odd.
The officers called me back over to 2309 Hancock because they could not find him in the building. So I walked through the building with them to kind of show them some nooks and crannies that he could have been. And from there on throughout the day into the later hours, I was at Hancock with the officers.
And Mr. Wilson was nowhere to be found, is that correct?
No.
Did you know where he went?
No.
Once again, Wade is unable to be located. This time, though, he hadn't fled in the black Nissan. It was still stationed in the parking lot of Joshua's business. The vehicle is searched, and 2 cell phones are recovered. One belongs to Christine Melton, and the other belongs to Diane Ruiz. There's also what looks to be fresh blood stains all around the passenger seat of the vehicle. Law enforcement quickly learned that the vehicle belongs to Christine Melton, and they attempt to contact her via telephone, but she doesn't answer, so officers are dispatched to her apartment to try and make contact.
Based on all the facts and circumstances, I knew that we had, this was a very high priority. Several of my officers went to 4838 Tudor Drive, which is where we knew Christine Melton lived. We forced entry into the house by knocking on the front door with a ram.
And what happened when you got inside of her home?
We were inside somewhere around 45 seconds, long enough, it's a small apartment, long enough to see there was nothing in the living room, nothing in the kitchen, but on the floor between the bedroom and the kitchen was a large bundle of, it was hard to tell, it looked like bed sheets and clothing. We couldn't see anything right away. We spread apart the sheets just enough to see a leg, a lower portion of a leg. I noticed immediately there was a unique tattoo on it. I've put on a glove to feel for a pulse, and I could feel that her arm was already stiff.
Multiple blunt force injuries are found all over Christine's body. When an autopsy is performed, they learned that some of these injuries were so severe that they had caused damage to her lungs, liver, bladder, colon, and brain. There are numerous contusions on the top of her head, and her brain had begun to swell. All of these are confirmed to have been inflicted prior to her death. The actual cause of death is asphyxiation, and this is found through deep bruising on her neck and petechiae in her eyes. Sometime in the afternoon, Wade's father would receive a call from his son. It is described that the two had a somewhat decent relationship, but it mostly centered around Wade asking for help in some way or another. Wade's parents had him when they were very young, around 14 years old, and he was put up for adoption. The boy was taken in by a family who went to the same church as his young mother's parents. In this household, it is said that his home life was stable and he was very loved. When Wade turned 18, he wanted to meet his biological father, so he reached out, and that's how they initially connected. Over the years, they didn't meet up too much in person, but as mentioned, Wade would frequently call up and ask for help, usually money.
He just told me, he did something. There was 2 people gone that would not be back. He said, I'm a killer.
When he talked about these 2 people who were no longer with us and that he was a killer, did he show any type of remorse?
No, ma'am. I just told him to call me back. I just thought it was another story,
What time did he call you back?
It was around 10 o'clock.
What did he tell you?
He just said he met a girl at a bar. They went back to her house, hung out for a little bit, and then she fell asleep.
What did he say happened after she fell asleep?
He said he got on top of her and choked her.
What name did he call her? Did he refer to her in a derogatory term?
He said, I choked that bitch. He left her there and took her car.
What did he say about the second girl?
He said he saw her walking down the street and stopped and asked her for directions. And she got in the car with him.
What did he say happened once she got in the car with him?
He said he reached over and choked her.
And did he tell you that he choked her while he was driving?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what did he say happened after he choked her?
He said he was looking for a place to put her body.
Did he find a place where he eventually dumped her body?
Yes, ma'am.
A vehicle backed out from the lot next door right towards us and then drove off out onto the main road.
Now, the lot that you saw this vehicle leaving from, was that a lot with a house on it?
No, it's an empty lot with a lot of bushes and stuff like that. We just see the back of the car, and from the front you could see from the wiper blades or whatever, and maybe from the grill or the bumper, there were branches sticking out like this on the sides. Well, we never seen a car in there before. It was the first time ever.
Now, at that time, did you think to call the police or do anything about it?
No, not really. Well, I thought to myself at the time I must have a look later and see what's going on there, but then we went out somewhere for the day and I forgot all about it.
What did he tell you about the situation when he got to the place where he was going to dump her body?
He said that he pulled her out of the car and realized that she was still breathing.
So what did he tell you he did when he realized she's still breathing?
He said he got back in the car and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti.
What's his demeanor as he's telling you?
He was excited.
You say excited, what do you mean by that?
I felt like he was wanting me to feel the way he felt about it.
Did he seem proud of it?
Yes.
Did he seem to show any kind of remorse?
No, ma'am.
Did you have additional concerns of what might happen if you didn't turn him into law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that, sir?
He would have done it again.
Do you know where he's at when he's telling you these things?
I just knew he was in a house that he broke into when he was running from the police.
At some time, did you receive a call from detectives once you had gotten to Ohio?
Yes.
And did you learn that someone had broken into your home?
We did, yes.
Again, had you given any permission for someone to come to your home? And did you know the person that they found in your home?
No.
I told him I was going to send him an Uber, and I needed the address of where he was.
Were you actually going to send him an Uber?
No, ma'am.
And so when you told him that you were going to send him an Uber, did he give you that address?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you then do with the address he gave you?
My wife was messaging with the officer.
So at this point, when he's giving you all this information and you're giving this information to law enforcement, had the second girl's body been found?
No, ma'am.
Were you on the phone with him when law enforcement showed up at that house?
Yes, ma'am.
Police arrive, and Wade refuses to come outside. He still speaks to his father on the phone, and after some back and forth, Wade listens to his dad and peacefully exits the house. He's taken into custody. The house is searched, and it is learned that Wade had eaten some food from the fridge, drank a number of White Claw alcoholic beverages, and had changed into some of the residents' clothing. For 3 days following, Diane Ruiz was still classified as a missing person, but there was great concern that she was the other victim of Wade, seeing as her phone had been located in the black Nissan. On the third day, some officers are on patrol searching around the lake, and something catches their attention.
So we're driving the perimeter of the lake and just, looking down in kind of the weeds and things of that nature. Saw a single vulture circling a wooded area to our east. And Officer Wilson and I both looked at each other and said, well, let's go over there and see what we find. It was kind of it was like an undeveloped lot with some trees on it, really, kind of a wooded lot area. So we pulled the truck up around into the empty lot, and as we kind of started to turn north in the northern direction there is when we both recognized a body in the woods.
I was on duty at the time at the Cape Coral Police Department as a forensic specialist. We were advised by our law enforcement partners that an unidentified body had been located and that they requested crime scene to respond to it. This is the scene specific for where Miss Ruiz was found. She was in an advanced stage of decomposition. Towards the center of the body, the belly area is bloated, showing the gases of the body starting to get larger and larger, which will expand the body itself. Her hands were very deteriorated. The skin was already starting to slip off, and her face was not recognizable. There was a very large amount of bug activity located all over her body as well.
So she was in the stages of putrefactive decomposition. So her tissues were being decomposed and degrading. She had some evidence of animal or scavenging activity on her body as well. And so portions of her ears and nose were removed already, most likely by avian scavengers. But I could see externally, first and foremost, that she had fracturing of the nasal bone. She also had a laceration underneath her left breast. She also had bruising or hemorrhaging in the skin on both sides of the left and right sides of the body. Bruising on the back of her left forearm, bruising on the back of her left hand. I can also see that she had a fracture of the fourth finger, the proximal part of the fourth finger, and she also had some bruising on her right arm as well. The other thing is there was actual hemorrhage around the membrane between the first and the second cervical vertebrae. And so what that tells me is that there was a significant force that went through that region while she was alive.
Could Diana Ruiz have survived these?
Given the severity of the injuries to the neck, I would say no.
Would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury by telling them your name?
I'm Scott Hannon, the fiance of Diane Ruiz.
Mr. Hannon, I'd like to direct your attention back to the 7th of October of 2019. What were you doing that day?
I was working.
Okay. When did you leave for work?
I usually leave at 6:30 in the morning.
And I'm assuming you left from your residence at the time?
Yes.
Did you have any contact with her after you left for work that day?
A brief text message. She didn't think I gave her a kiss goodbye.
Had you?
Of course.
Diane was in such a state of decomposition that she was unrecognizable. Her fiancé had to identify her by a tattoo on her back and a ring that she was wearing, which he gave to her as a gift. On the same day that Diane's body is discovered, Wade requests to speak with a detective working his case because he would like to discuss his involvement.
Did Mr. Wilson indicate to you that he wished to speak to you?
He did.
Did you make any threats or promises in order to get him to speak with you?
No, sir.
Did he was the only request that he made of you to get some French fries?
Was a burger and fries, but yes, sir.
And as a result of that, did he sit down and speak with you?
He did.
Okay.
This interview was recorded, but I have to say, I think this is likely the worst audio I've ever heard to date. Here's an excerpt from it so that you can understand what I'm talking about. Keep in mind as well, what you're hearing is with my attempts to clean it up as best I could. Luckily, during the state's closing arguments, the prosecutor would highlight many of the things that Wade said during this interview.
And 3 days later, he's still bragging about it to law enforcement. And his biggest concern, whether he could get a hamburger and French fries. As Diane Ruiz laid in that field, being scavenged by animals with bugs eating her face to the point where she's unrecognizable, this guy over here wants some French fries. And he's bragging about the fact that Diane Ruiz looks like spaghetti. This is a man with no respect for women, with no respect for human life. When asked about Mila and killing her, he says there were too many people around. I probably would kill her, you know. You know what I mean, given the chance. And after Christine Melton, when he picked up Diane Ruiz, he told the detectives, I was like, you know what? I've already done it once, I'm going to do it again. It came across my mind to murder, just kill, kill, kill. He talks about I could get sex with her and then I was going to kill her. This is going to sound weird, I'm just really horny. So I was looking for an easy piece of pussy and saw her walking and she was strolling or whatever early in the morning. So I was like, whatever, I'll give it a shot. When I give it a shot, it usually is 9 times out of 10 works for me. And it did, you know. Fuck it, I should kill her. She said, drop me off here at school. I could tell she was getting scared. I saw the fear, and I think the fear triggered me to just kill her. It was going in a weird direction. I could tell things were off because she wanted to be pulled over, and she really wanted to get out of the car bad at this point. And I could tell she was I can sense you, fear. I'm like a fucking lion, and you're the prey, and I can sense it. They can't get away from me even if they wanted to. I'm too strong. I mean, I don't look strong maybe necessarily, but I can, believe it or not. I'm not trying to be mean. I can take either one of you guys down. And this is what he's telling detectives as he's locked up in the Lee County Jail, confessing and bragging to the detectives about these murders that he committed.
Throughout the interview, he claims that he initially killed Christine Melton for no reason at all. She had fallen asleep, and he was watching her. Then randomly, the idea crept into his mind that he could kill her, so he did. There's no other explanation for how this all started beyond that. Furthermore, he indicates that following Christine's death, he used her face to unlock her phone. Then he went outside and took her car. Wade would say that he wasn't thinking straight due to using flakka, a highly dangerous drug which has been compared to bath salts. He reports that the effects of it saw him thinking in shocking ways. With a full confession, and much of it lining up with details of the case that he couldn't possibly know, Wade is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, grand theft of a motor vehicle, battery, burglary of a dwelling, and first-degree petty theft. At trial, he pleads not guilty, but there's a mountain of evidence against him. I have to say, I was slightly confused regarding what his defense argument was. They presented no opening statement, and they barely cross-examined any witnesses, nor did they present any witnesses of their own. Their closing argument, though, would illuminate what they were angling for.
I want to get up here and I want to argue about premeditation. I mean, I'm not arguing whether these ladies are dead. We're not arguing, but the premeditation, something happened. I suspect it was the drugs. Shepard was saying, oh yeah, we were doing cocaine, just not my cocaine. That was for me. Well, if you listen to the statement that was played yesterday, Mr. Wilson talks about using flakka. That is not good stuff. It puts holes in your brain.
Objection, facts not in evidence.
Sustained. Anyway, something goes wrong. Miss Montanez described it. Killer eyes. 2 black holes. No soul.
Dark serial killer eyes, where there's nothing to reason with. It's a black hole. You're saying words, you're trying to evoke emotion in somebody, and there's nothing behind those eyes.
Rather than premeditation, I would submit to you that the judge is going to give you an instruction on second-degree murder. And one of the, or also known as depraved mind murder. I don't think anyone can argue that none of this was not depraved. But in order to commit second-degree murder, there must be an unlawful killing by an act imminently dangerous to another, no one's arguing that, demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. Whatever he was doing, nobody's arguing was not depraved. Running over the body 10 to 20 times, nobody's saying that's not depraved. We're not arguing he didn't do it. There's solid evidence that he is responsible for those 2 deaths and the battery of Miss Montanez. need to think about that, whether this was premeditated in term. I mean, Miss Middleton had sex with him. He could have just gotten up and left or stayed with her. Instead, he murders her? That's not clear thinking, shall we say. I'm not arguing insanity. I'm just arguing that the state's claiming premeditation, and I'm saying he's whacked out. He's just out of his mind for any of this. I respectfully request that you consider whether this was premeditated or depraved mind murder.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this was premeditation all day long. The defendant's attitude toward these women was despicable. He bragged about their deaths to his dad after he killed them. No regret, no remorse. And he replaced the name Christine's mother gave her at birth with the name bitch. I killed a bitch. I choked that bitch out. You don't even need to consider lesser included crimes in this case because the state has met its burden and proven premeditated murder. And I want to start with the defendant's own words about premeditation and how we know that he took a second to think about what he did before he did it. All right, the truth is, I picked the girl up and killed her. I wasn't worried about the school, you know. Remember, this is during the day. School is in session, and it's an elementary school. Little kids being dropped off by moms and dads and buses. I wasn't worried about school, you know. I choked her out until she couldn't breathe anymore. She wasn't fully dead yet. Now, he's choking her. He could have stopped, but he decided to continue so that he could kill her. She wasn't fully dead yet, and she was still alive, and I pushed her out of the car, and she tried to get up, and I ran her over with the car. And I ran over maybe like 10 times, 20 times, her head, her body. He says, I put the window down, and I said, hey, do you know where the high school is, where the school's at? Could you show me? She said, it's right down there. I said, I drove by there, and I didn't see it. Could you please show me? She got in the car. That's all it took. That's all it took. Got her in my car, and then from there we drove to the school, and I was going to drop her off. But I knew in my mind I wasn't going to drop her off. There's the mind. I knew in my mind I wasn't going to drop her off. But she wanted to get dropped off there. I said, okay, you can go. As soon as she went to get out, whatever, I grabbed her by the neck and choked her. That's when I was choking her right there. I was choking her out right there. She came back to life 3 or 4 times. I mean, she was a fighter for sure, I'll give her that. When I pushed her out, she fell out still alive, trying to get up. I backed up and just ran and hit her, ran and hit her, ran and hit her until she was not moving anymore. That's not premeditated murder, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what is. Not only do you have his own words, all the evidence shows premeditation. Remember when he told his father about murdering Christine, he says, she's just sleeping there. They had had sex. Remember, this is 6 in the morning. Stephanie Johnson has already left. He sees her asleep after a night of going out, having a good time. And he says, I decided I was going to kill her, and I got on top of her. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is classic premeditation. And there doesn't need to be any length of time. It can be just a short swapping at a mosquito. Defense also alluded that, oh, you know, there's drugs and alcohol, and he was on these drugs. That's what he says. But nowhere in the packet of jury instructions are you going to hear or are you going to read when you take those jury instructions back with you that drugs or alcohol is a defense to murder or a defense to premeditation. Using drugs or alcohol as an excuse for injury or death to anyone is insulting. And you'll find nowhere that the law allows that as an excuse. And long after the high of any drugs or alcohol could have worn off, he's calling Daddy. Dad, I need you again. I need money. I need to get out of here. I need you to come pick me up. I need you to help me. And he's bragging to his dad, wanting his dad to be proud of the women he killed. And then 3 days later, when he's in custody and he's on no drugs and no alcohol, what does he do again? He's bragging to the detectives. All those quotes I just read you, those were all 3 days later when he has no access to any of that. In his own words to law enforcement, he was a fucking lion and they were the prey. And he could sense it. He liked knowing that they were in fear. He liked knowing that they wanted to get away, and he was not about to let them. As humans, there's a desire to make sense of it all, to watch the news and come to some understanding of why, to have answers to suffering, and to look for some explanation, to look for a motive to explain why people do what they do. But that's why the state doesn't have to prove a motive. If you had to sit and find a motive or an explanation or an excuse for Wade Wilson's behavior, you'd be in the jury room for years. Because there's no explanation, no justification. This defendant is guilty as charged. And we ask that you convict him of all of the crimes the state has alleged. Thank you.
The verdict form appears to be in order. I'll have the clerk publish the verdict.
We, the jury, finds as follow as to the defendant in this case. Count 1, first-degree murder, Christine Melton. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Count 4, first-degree murder, Diane Ruiz. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Count 5, burglary of dwelling. The defendant is guilty of burglary.
After being found guilty, the trial enters the penalty phase, as the jury must decide whether Wade will spend his life in prison or face the death penalty. Here the defense would go into quite a lot of detail regarding Wade's mental health and his personal history. To push their argument, 2 defense psychologists take the stand to provide their opinions on the man. In addition to interviews that these psychologists conducted with Wade, they would also review a 4-page letter written by his adoptive mother and hundreds of pages of records from the Department of Corrections. According to the defense psychologists, he suffers from a range of things: ADHD, hallucinations, schizoaffective disorder, major depression, anxiety, defiant disorder, adjustment disorder, and antisocial personality disorder.
The records going back over 10 years were indicative that Mr. Wilson presented with numerous psychiatric, psychological symptomatology, major mental illness, either psychosis or depression or a combination of both. He's been treated for these conditions for over 10 years, reflective in the records. Mr. Wilson was adopted by Steve and Candy Wilson almost after birth. So throughout his younger years up through puberty, he was functioning fine. He was active in sports. He was part of the family. They found that there was a dramatic change that occurred in puberty. He became reclusive, paranoid, mood swings. He would sometimes think that there are people out to, aliens out to get him. Very concerned about the family, the parents, and he became very disruptive and very, very difficult to manage.
Did he start experimenting with controlled substances?
Yes.
Well, Mr. Wilson, as a kid, age 15 or 16, would go around and systematically close the curtains. And at some point, probably the first or second time, Mrs. Wilson recalled saying, well, why are you doing this? What's wrong? What's going on? And he said, there are people out there. And she said, okay. And he said, they're going to harm me. And she said, are you sure? And he said, they're going to harm you too, Mom. They're going to harm the family. And he was very upset. And this happened more than once. That is, he had an apparent belief that others were intending to harm him and the family for reasons that were never specified. Now that sounds, frankly, not only paranoid, but delusional. It isn't just that he was frightened or scared, but he had turned that fear into an entity or a group of entities who were planning to harm him and the family.
When he was a little boy, what did he do? They found him wearing a long-sleeve shirt with the shirt stapled to his arms. This isn't something that just occurred overnight. This is something that's been growing in Wade Wilson for a long, long time.
So they tried to get mental health treatment. They sought out psychologists. Mr. Wilson was not cooperative and very difficult in terms of trying to get him the help that they sought. And unfortunately, it was only through the police, when his behavior became destructive, that intervention finally occurred. Mr. Wilson has a whole series of head injuries. He played tackle football for 4 years, and he was hit hard, very hard, many times. At age 18, he had a motor vehicle accident. He was sitting in the back seat without a seat belt, and the driver ran into a big tree. Mr. Wilson said, "I remember waking up and it looked like everyone in the car was dead." He suffered a loss of consciousness and his head hurt, but he did not go to the hospital. At age 21, he had another motor vehicle accident. He was sitting in the passenger seat without a seat belt, and the driver hit a big oak tree. He blanked out for a few minutes and was taken by ambulance to Tallahassee Memorial Hospital. He signed out of the hospital AMA against medical advice. His sister called the hospital and found out that they performed a CT scan of the brain and there was no bleeding. The mom reported that at age 20, Mr. Wilson overdosed on drugs and he had a grand mal seizure. An ambulance came and took him to the hospital. Again, the CT was performed, and the sister again reported there was no bleeding. The DOC records on 6/3/18 reported that he was jumped by 3 inmates and suffered a loss of consciousness for 1 to 2 minutes. The DOC records in December of 2021, Wade complained of chronic migraine headaches, and they performed another CT scan. So this is more recent.
Well, I mean, he got some treatment in jail and witnessed his present level of medication, but he never got adequate assessment any time, near as I can tell. That's one of the problems with his situation and with this sad case, that no psychiatrist or psychologist as a team has ever systematically diagnosed him, begun him on a course of medication which he stayed with and which he tried, and no one has ever been able to determine if he really would respond to medication over a long period of time or not. His thinking is, if you will, messed up beyond ordinary thinking. This is not somebody who's just burnt out because he did some bad drugs when he was in high school. This is somebody who's had significant thought disruption going back even before, even just contemporaneous with high school, before he was abusing drugs.
So my ultimate conclusion is that Mr. Wilson has neurocognitive brain impairment. Most likely right hemispheric and also frontal lobe involvement. His brain is not functioning like a normal, healthy individual.
Is it possible to fix Mr. Wilson?
I doubt that. I think it's possible to diagnose him better. I think it's possible to give him medications which would help him function significantly better. I mean, first of all, it's impossible to address the tragedy that brings us all here. That's happened. But beyond that, we can't fix him. We can't give him an IQ of 140. We can't make him a modern day Einstein. We can't fully address these problems, but we can address some of them probably.
They talked about this dramatic change when he was 13 where he became withdrawn, uncooperative, moody.
Correct.
Those also things that you might see with someone who begins using drugs?
Correct.
You also mentioned that he was Baker acted.
Correct.
And in all of the records you reviewed, and in all of your conversations with his family, he was only Baker acted one time.
Correct.
And that one Baker Act was related to his father finding drugs.
Correct.
And when his father found drugs, he called the police. Police came. Defendant ran from police. Subsequently gets Baker acted.
Correct.
And he actually is Baker acted not for multiple days. He's released the next day, correct?
Correct.
So tell me, doctor, in your review of the records of the CT scans and of talking to his family, what history did you find of actual brain damage in the records?
So the fact that a CT scan was performed so many times on him with multiple head injuries.
So the fact that he's had multiple CT scans does not mean that he's had multiple brain injuries.
Well, the only reason they would do the CT scan is to follow the protocol of head injuries. Right. So he's had multiple head injuries. The fact is that there's a history of multiple brain injuries due to a variety of different circumstances, and that is something that one certainly would make a consideration in terms of what their brain functioning may be.
Okay, so you're using the term brain injuries, but the CT scans don't support any brain injuries from what you've seen.
Again, there's no fracture and there's no bleeding, but that doesn't mean there's no brain injury.
Okay, but my question is, again, none of these records actually show a brain injury. There could be, but they don't show it.
Well, the test is as sophisticated as what it can do.
Okay, but according to the test that you are able to review, there's no...
Objection argumentative.
Does not answer the question.
Overruled. You can ask your question.
The question again, doctor, is these CT scans, there's no evidence that you've seen of any brain injury.
They were normal, that's correct.
The state would also present their own expert psychologist to provide his opinion on Wade. During the defense's argument, there is extensive testimony regarding testing that they put Wade through to evaluate him. Through this, they determined that he suffered severe impairment to his executive brain functions. This is something that the state psychologist would dispute. Furthermore, he would rebut the multiple diagnoses that the defense presented as indicated in the prison records, saying that all of these records were noted through self-reporting from Wade, not an actual mental health professional that had diagnosed them.
Does Mr. Wilson suffer from any type of psychotic disorder like schizophrenia or psychoaffective disorder, or from any type of mood disorder?
He does not. There is no indication in any of the medical records that I reviewed from the incarceration, going back to 2013, of the psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health counselors employed by the state of Florida in these facilities that made a diagnosis of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or schizoaffective disorder. If there is, I'd like to see it because I could not find it. Now, there is a mention in there where Mr. Wilson says that he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when he was younger. That's what he says. But that's not what he was. They never came up with the diagnosis. He was diagnosed with major depression. He was diagnosed with anxiety. And he was diagnosed with an adjustment disorder. So he was diagnosed with some things, but not these diagnoses. And as you have heard from testimony today, these are serious diagnoses. These are not something that you're just going to sort of miss. If you look at a record from 9/17/18, he denies mania. So a specific denial there. Denies auditory visual hallucinations. Likewise, denies paranoia, panic attacks, mania, and any symptoms of an obsessive compulsive disorder. So it's not just that nobody ever noticed these things. People ask him about it, and there's no record of it anywhere in the file. And then, of course, none of these diagnoses that we've talked about today can be made in the face of substance use. None of them.
Why not?
Because the DSM says not. If you put up the criteria, you will see that every one of these diagnoses says the same thing. And the same thing it says is the disturbance is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance. Because if somebody is on amphetamine, they can hallucinate, they can talk fast, they can be hyperverbal, they can have delusions. Nothing about schizophrenia is due to the amphetamine. So you can't make it, and it's the same for almost every disorder. Everyone we've talked about today, for sure.
Does Mr. Wilson have a long history of substance abuse?
Mr. Wilson, in my interview, told me he was a drug addict since he was 13. As I told you before, parents are oftentimes the last one to know that the kid is using. And so while the mother, I believe that she noticed these behavior changes, and then when he gets into school, he starts getting into trouble. What's he get in trouble for? Selling drugs. I think if you wanted to look at the more logical explanation, is, in my professional opinion, is it more likely that this is an emerging schizophrenia or an emerging bipolar disorder, or is this the effects of the drug use? In my professional opinion, you're seeing the effects of the drug use. And the drugs that he used, I mean, talks about cocaine, mushrooms, acid, meth at various points in his life. So that all of these drugs can affect cognitive functioning, mental status, hallucinations, delusions.
Now, as we're looking up here at the screen, we have no history of brain injury. How did you come to that conclusion?
Playing baseball, he got a bump on his head. Those are not head injuries. I mean, if you have kids, they get bumps on heads. If you yourself may have had bumps on your head, that's not a head injury. Just because you play football for 4 years in high school doesn't indicate that you've had any kind of a head injury. He reports 2 motor vehicle accidents, which I don't have any records of. Defining a head injury, defining a traumatic brain injury is also defined in his DSM. There are specific symptoms you have to have at the time of the event. We have no records of a head injury. We have a reported CT. We haven't seen it, but we have reported CT beforehand. And the statement was, well, if they had a CT, it must have been a brain injury. No, it would be done to rule out. So if you went to the ER right now and said, I have a throbbing headache in the side of my head right here, they're going to do a CT to your brain. Why? To make sure you don't have a tumor. That doesn't mean that they think you have a head injury. They're going to get the CT and they're going to say no. He had a second CT, at least one that we do know. This is when he reported headaches and a pressure in his head, is what he says. They take him to Lee Memorial or somewhere here, I think maybe a mobile place. I forget how it works. They do a CT of the brain and it comes out negative. Okay, nothing there to support this. They did not say brain injury. In fact, it says normal brain CT. So there's no evidence anywhere so I have a hard time when you say, well, he's a history of head trauma. I can't agree to that because I don't have evidence of it.
You formed an opinion as to whether or not his memory and executive function test scores are consistent with his behavior.
I think on one of the tests Dr. Eisenstein gave him, he told you he fell 7 standard deviations below the mean. Remember that?
That was, at the end of the test, it was even worse than at any point of the test. The cumulative perseverative errors of 43 was 7.15 standard deviations below the mean.
And what did that signal you?
So this was profoundly impaired frontal lobe executive functioning skills.
So 1 standard deviation below the mean puts you at the 16th percentile. 2 standard deviations below the mean puts you at the 2nd percentile. 3 standard deviations below the mean puts you at the 0.1 percentile. I don't know how you get to 7 standard deviations below the mean. That would be it's almost an impossible score. How could that be? No tables I know go down that low because you can't be 7 standard deviations below the mean. How can that be, and how could you even interact? When you look at his memory, we don't see this. This would be catastrophic memory impairment. right? It would be catastrophic. It would be noticed by somebody in the last 10 years.
And you didn't see any catastrophic memory issues with Mr. Wilson in this particular case?
No, no memory issues at all.
We're not trying to excuse Mr. Wilson's conduct on October 7th. That's not what this is about. But we are trying to show you what kind of person he was and why he was that kind of person on that date. Going back to the drugs. In his statement, it must have been like bath salts or flakka. It just made me lose my effing mind, and it made me effing get crazy. When I'm sober, I'm actually a decent guy, which is what everybody else said. Whatever that dude had me on, like fentanyl, flakka, whatever the F it was, dude, it was not cocaine. I thought it was different, and he gave me a lot of it. That shit had me up for 2.5 days. Once again, that's not an excuse for doing what he did. I just want you to understand what his state of mind was when he was going through these events on October 7th. And that person is not Wade Wilson. And that person does not deserve your recommendation for death. For many years, we held on to the hope that nurture would overcome genetics. He was a wonderful kid, kind to animals, kind to those smaller than himself, and loving to his family. But there are many things in life that are out of our control, and it wasn't enough. Wade, like his birth mother, became a victim of his diseased mind. As his family, we knew the happy and loving child that he was. The boy who wanted to spend time with his parents and sisters. The one who played sports and loved to read. That person would never do the things he has done. That boy is still in there somewhere, but is now overtaken by the monster of disease and addiction. We can't love him less because madness has taken him from us. Lock away the monster, but show mercy to the boy inside who didn't choose this path. Know that boy is still in there somewhere, and he is still loved. Lock away the monster.
We, the jury, find by a vote of 9-3 that Wade Wilson should be sentenced to death. As to count 4, first-degree murder, Diane Ruiz. We, the jury, unanimously find...
It's at this point of the video where I've finished presenting the trial and am speaking from my own thoughts regarding the case. I'll address the easiest thing to spot about this case, and that's Wade's overall demeanor throughout the trial. I've read a lot of articles that are titled with things like, "Arrogant defendant doesn't flinch when death penalty is handed down," or "Killer can't stop smirking throughout testimony." I did notice these things as well. I mean, technically, the headlines aren't lying. But the question in my mind, does he actually not care? Or is it all an act? Me personally, I think it's a performance. I imagine deep down he cares quite a bit. There's reports from all 3 psychologists that at different points in their interviews with him, he seemed afraid and paranoid that prison staff were listening in on their conversations. One could take that as he's feigning paranoia to further look like he suffers from some sort of psychotic condition. Or he could in fact be incredibly concerned about how he's being perceived, or how that information getting out could harm him. In his police interview, he tells the detectives that he could take them both down if he wanted to, and it's a telling little line. This is, I believe, how he perceives the world, frequently weighing up who he can and can't take down, and what sort of threat others could pose. How much danger might he be in at any given time? He's a pretty big guy, so this paranoia, if you want to call it that, it manifests as a confident display of physical power, but underneath that, he's afraid of something. The man doesn't want to be in prison, and he for sure doesn't want the death penalty. He absolutely cares about everything that is happening here, and that can be most easily seen in 2 instances following his arrest. The first being, About a year after the incident, he agrees to an interview with a news station, and Wade claims that he's been set up. He says he was forced to confess to the people he told about the murders. In this story he tells, the killings were not committed by him. The entire thing is a high-level conspiracy involving a dangerous crime ring. He says, quote, "It worries me because of the corruption. The level of corruption around here in Fort Myers that I was involved with. When coming to jail, I knew that I had to get something out there as far as a confession, because I was told to do that. Otherwise my parents were going to be harmed. My children were going to be harmed. As far as Diane Ruiz, I never ran across her, never seen her." End quote. Wade would talk to the interviewer about another case with a missing woman who hasn't been seen since January of 2020, and he claims that he has information on her whereabouts and who took her. Now he is ready to expose the people that framed him and bring this whole criminal apparatus down. He said it started when he was recruited from Key West to be a part of a crime organization in Lee County. After some time, he didn't want to be involved with it anymore. His decision to leave had placed him in severe danger. Quote, "A lot of things we were doing from Key West to Fort Myers, including the human trafficking and various other things, prostitution with the women, drug trafficking. Some of the prostitution was happening at a local spa, and I can prove it. Cell phone records will show, text messages will prove, and these are things that my lawyers already have. I'm not trying to discredit the people testifying against me. I'm just trying to tell the truth." Although this story, and when I say the word story, I mean that I believe this to be a fictional sense of the word, although it's compelling, there's a lot of problems with it. For starters, where was this defense during trial? Was the corruption ring so high up that his lawyers didn't want to get involved with exposing that sort of thing? Or is it all fabrication from a man who people describe as a convincing storyteller? You can make up your own mind, but for me, the evidence against him is far too damning for me to take these claims of crime ring seriously. The second instance of him caring about his fate is the fact that whilst waiting for trial, he actually attempted to escape the jail. He was found trying to break out of a window and received further charges for this. So here we have a man who obviously wants his freedom, cares deeply about how others perceive him, and the result is this story, a villain attempting to become the hero. If there were any credibility to his claims, I feel we would have heard something about it in trial. What was stopping him from an outburst where he demands better representation, seeing as the weak-minded lackeys he's received won't listen to him? He's trying to do a good thing, damn it. Trying to take down the bad guys, and these attorneys won't listen. He has nothing to lose from doing that. He already faces the death penalty, so why not try get the truth out there in a moment that matters the most? What it looks like to me is that the attempt to divert guilt from himself failed, and by the time he got to trial, he's somewhat accepted that he'll be found guilty. So this image of a man unfazed by a sentence of death is nothing more than him trying to portray himself as a strong-headed individual, someone who can stand tall while being hit with something that would likely bring most people to tears, someone who shows no emotion and instead arrogantly mocks the system that everyone else takes so seriously. It's a good performance in my opinion, but just that, it's a performance. Underneath that display, I can only imagine the sort of noise going on in his mind. Don't take my thoughts there either as any form of me trying to find sympathy for the man. I have none. Not only due to his actions in this case, but research him for a few minutes and you'll bring up a pretty dark criminal history. Rape, sexual assault, violence, drugs, links to white supremacist groups, gangs, theft, trespassing. The man has been in and out of prison. He tied up his ex-girlfriend and put her in the trunk of her car. He bit her face and attacked her. At the time of this incident that he went to trial for, he was even out on probation from another case. To think all of these people around him on that night of October 6th were merely centimeters away from such a beast hiding in plain sight. I can't even begin to imagine how the defense attorneys felt when they got this case. I feel for them. They had so little to work with. It seemed as though they prepared nothing.
Could the injuries to the neck area occur during rough sex?
Some of the injuries, I guess it's possible.
You mentioned various, you said he was very angry
Yes.
and you were very scared.
Yes.
Then why did you agree to meet him?
To get my $80,000 car back that he had stolen.
The car, but why did you expect him to bring the car? You knew he couldn't drive it.
He was with somebody that had drove it away. Why would he not be able to return it?
How did Mr. Wilson get the keys to your $80,000 car?
Okay, so I never carry a purse. I carry 2 phones on me, and the flap of my cell phones is this place where I put all my credit cards, all my IDs, everything that I need, and I carry 2 cell phones with me all the time, and I have keys, and often the person I'm with, I say, will you put your keys in my pocket? And that is exactly how he had it. I do it with my husband every day.
So he didn't
steal the keys. I asked him to put them in his pocket for safekeeping. He doesn't know how to drive a stick shift. Why would I assume that he would take it?
You said you had your own stash cocaine?
Yep.
Okay. Did everyone use it?
My own, for me.
Okay. What was everybody else using?
Whatever they wanted, I don't know.
You know where they got the cocaine from?
Oh, I had my own, and that's all I was worried about. Like, I wasn't sharing it.
Okay. But you were using it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
At one point during the start of a cross-examination, one of the attorneys can be heard whispering, "I don't know what to ask."
Any questions?
When it came to the penalty phase, though, you better believe they were prepared. And that's where they made their most compelling argument. From the start, it seems as though they accepted he would be found guilty, and then had spent all of their time and energy getting ready for the penalty phase. 35-year-old Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, who was 43. Where to even begin on how heartbreaking it is to think about their fate, especially for Diane, helping out a stranger who needed directions whilst she was walking to work. Christine, by all reports, was a lovely woman. She loved Halloween, children, traveling, and seeing the world, and she deeply loved her cat. The cat was actually found curled up, laying next to her body when law enforcement found her. Neighbors remember her as being sweet and helpful, and her workmates feel heartbroken that they'll never hear her laugh or crack jokes that she was so well known for. Her friends say with a heavy heart that she will never be a mother, a role that she would have been perfect for. Diane has much of the same sentiments expressed for her as well. Caring, gentle. She religiously volunteered to help homeless people and people in need. She was a much-loved member of the community. I'll play some victim impact statements because these people knew them well, they loved them deeply, and they'll be able to give you a proper idea of who they lost.
Christine Melton was my best friend and my cousin until October 7th, 2019. It is my task to describe this beautiful human and to somehow capture Christine in a way that 12 strangers and 2 alternates can understand, using only my words. And I will do so sitting no more than 20 feet from the convicted, who beat Christine, murdered Christine, and threw her away like garbage. I hope you will understand this is not the ideal scenario to be sharing personal stories, although you would have loved them. There are no words to describe the absolutely lovely Christine Ann Melton, but I will try. She was precious, not just to me, to everyone who knew her. She was a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a niece, and a cousin. She was loved, and her life had value. Christine was remarkably funny, had a quick wit, and an entirely unique personality. If you were with her, you laughed. We laughed every single day. Children loved her because Christine was good and they could feel it. She wasn't an aunt. She was the aunt. Christine was the godmother of my son, and it was her greatest honor and one that she deserved. Our children miss her in ways I could never articulate, and it is gut-wrenching to see them so destroyed. Christine loved traveling and exploring the world. She would buy plane tickets and figure out the rest later. She loved camping and concerts and Halloween and a themed party of any kind and celebrating life and accomplishments. Christine adored her mother and loved being with her. They were two peas in a pod. They were the same and different in all the most beautiful ways. They lived less than 1 block apart in 2019 when this occurred. Christine's mother has not been at this trial. Once Christine was murdered, she was never the same. How could she be? Her health declined quickly. She left Florida and is now cared for her son in Maryland. Christine's mother is my godmother. She is special just like Christine. When she left Florida, she made me promise to see this trial through, and I have kept that promise. We all have. We have sat through graphic testimony and heard all of the positively gruesome details of how our girl met our end. And I sit here today and I listen, because that's what Christine would have done. She would have sacrificed her sanity to see justice done, and so I have done the same. The prosecution has won this trial, but I assure you, the family, friends, and loved ones of Christine Ann Melton have only lost.
I'm Zane Romero.
Do you know, or did you know a young lady by the name of Diane Ruiz?
Yes, that was my mom. My father unfortunately passed away when I was only 11 years old. My mother was all I had left. I was barely 2 months into my first year of high school when she passed away. When I was younger, I originally wanted to be a photographer. My mother went out of her way to find me a professional beginner photographer. She knew I wanted to print my photos, and she bought me a printer with photo paper. I no longer have those dreams, but I still constantly use those items. She was raised in a tough home environment and only ever wanted to give me and my brother nothing like that. She wanted us to grow up in a loving home and for us to be happy. My mother was a single mother who only ever wanted not only for her family but everybody around her to be happy. My mother's life dream was to be able to get married and raise her family. She was so close to getting everything she wanted. I would like to share some achievements I've been able to accomplish. My senior year, I achieved my high school's most principal award. Sophomore year, I won my first scholarship based off of my art portfolio. I graduated high school. I got accepted into all the colleges I applied and also received a full ride scholarship from one. My senior year, I received the John Phillips User Award for marching band. I got my driver's license. I received my first car. During COVID, I ran a whole jewelry business for 2 years at 16. I got my first job. I'm getting my first apartment July. I'm a year ahead in my college education, and I have my first internship as a graphic designer. I only listed 13 out of many, both big and small, achievements. All 13 of these achievements my mom didn't get the chance to see me accomplish. My mother will never get the chance to see me get married, get to see me graduate college as a first-generation graduate, get to see me get my first real job. During college, I was sent to the ER for the first time. I got into my first car accident, and the only person I wanted to call was my mom, or how she went missing. I trusted my gut so much. Everything told me that she was coming home, and I haven't been able to trust her. I lived 5 years without her, and not a single day has gone by where I haven't been able to not think about her. My mother only had love in her heart, only wanted the best for me, and nothing that happened to her was ever deserved, and she just wanted to live a normal life.
Did you know where your mom was walking to that morning?
Yeah, to work.
And where did your mom work?
The Moose Lodge. That's me and my mom at the Moose Lodge on Mother's Day. That's my grandpa and my mom when she was a kid. That's my mom when she was younger. That's my mom and my brother while they were at Disney. That is my mom working at the Moose. I'm gonna assume at a bar, I don't know where. That was a picture I took of my mom working an event with her at the Moose. That's my mom and her brother. My mom and my brother. I took that picture of my mom and her boyfriend on this trail we went on. And that's my mom at the Moose.
That's my godmother and Christine. At Christmas, they always wore matching rings. Christine loves Halloween. This is her and some friends as the Golden Girls.
Christine on the top right.
Yes, in the yellow, yes. That is my Christine and my son, her godchild. It hangs in his room so that he remembers what she looks like. That is a group of us. We went to concerts every year for probably 20 years. That's Christine and Monty. That was her cat, the one who sat next to her crumpled body.
It is Monty, the fat cat we saw in the privacy photos.
Yes. It's Christine's family, her brother, her mom, her dad. That's her on the bottom, blonde and jumping. It's Christine on Easter. Bunny ears on with another child who loved her and who will never see her again. That's our family. It's me and my sister, Christine, our grandmother, and our aunt. There she is. Look at her. Look at her. You can see it. I know you can.